Welcome to Wing Academy Video, an extension of Wing Academy of Unfoldment. I'm your host, Diane Wing, and my show focuses on how to use spiritual concepts in the real world. We will address issues related to the mind, body, and spirit, discover how to release what holds us back, and ways to come into our power. Learn more at dianewing.com. Hi, everybody. I am thrilled to welcome Christopher Sansone, PhD. He's a seasoned life, leadership, and spiritual teacher and coach with over 25 years of experience, holding a doctorate in human development from Fielding Graduate Institute and integrating human development theory, transpersonal psychology, and post-traumatic growth into an evidence-based holistic practice. He's a certified practitioner of past life regression therapy and former teacher of the Hoffman quadrinity process. He's empowered hundreds of clients through his training at the Coactive Training Institute to lead with purpose, integrity, and self-awareness. His website is livelifesoul.com. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Diane. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yes, I'm excited as well because we've got, well, I'm gonna share your book on Amazon first.
Mhm.
And also, here's your website. Can you see that?
I can see the page. Thank you. Yes. And
The
now I see
website.
live life
Okay.
soul. Yes.
So, yes.
Yes.
So these are how you can connect with Chris. And the book isn't coming out until June 2nd, but you can pre-order it. And we're going to talk about it. So it's going to be a fun conversation, and you're going to see the value of the book, and you're going to see if you want to get yourself a copy. So it's called Longing, a Pilgrimage to Your Quiet Power Within. It explores the ache so many of us carry, not as something broken, but as a sacred signal guiding us back to wholeness, compassion, and inner truth. Dr. Sansone weaves psychology and spiritual wisdom into a deeply humane conversation that listeners will feel rather than simply hear. So I got a copy, and in reading it, it just seems like we've been looking at longing and shame and
Mhm.
emotional wounds all wrong.
I
Can you describe that? Like,
I
tell
do.
me
Yeah, I
about how
would
you
love
came
to,
to this.
because that was really the foundation, the founding motivation for me to write Longing. And I had, as you mentioned, been a coach for many, many years, teaching leadership development and teaching leadership development in the context of developing others. So I also taught the Hoffman quadrinity process for some 12 years, or excuse me, 9 years, was also in an administrative role there. So I was immersed in helping others grow and evolve, but there was always this nagging question about our own pain. Why do we suffer? And I know the Buddhists refer to this as a doorway. I love the way that the author, the prominent spokesperson for Kriya Yoga, Paramahansa Yogananda, said, "Pain is a prod to remembrance. Pain is a prod to remembrance of what? Of our essential nature. So it's not purposeless. And so taking that lens, as all through my experience led me to, was this vision that there's something deeper going on than the different habitual patterns that we learned and became compulsive and run us down rabbit holes as we merge into adulthood, right? We pick all those things up, and I'm sure that you know from your background, it's just these things that we imitate, that we adopt, and we act out through our childhood learning of those relationships we had foundationally with our parents primarily. And so, what was the point of all that? We can get ourselves kind of good enough healed, and I'm indicating with my hand sort of this, level of development, I'm referring to our own chakra system. When we get up to about level 4, the heart, and we can feel compassion and love, but we kind of stop there. And so then it becomes a maintenance project where we're maintaining that flow of energy between the root, our foundation and sense of belonging on the planet, and up through our emotions, up through our sense of ego and will and personality into our heart space. We pretty much hover there. And the deepest of conversations that we have in our day-to-day life tend to surface around that level. But the more that I saw people grow, change, and expand, particularly through the Hoffman process and through my own coaching and workshops, I knew there was something else. And it was the emergence into the higher level of being that we really find what we're looking for. And that is the striving, or as you said, the sacred signal of longing to move into something that serves us at a much deeper and broader level that we're really here to pursue, not only pursue, but to immerse into. And Joseph Campbell referred to that as bliss, the emergence into bliss. There's lots of other wonderful ways that Eastern philosophies and approaches refer to it. But I knew there was more. So that's why I began writing Longing.
We don't experience any of this stuff randomly or for no reason at all. I mean, and it's not about just putting the kibosh on it and trying to leave it behind. And, it's there for examination.
I love that. Yeah. Examination, really purposeful. What if we talk about the examined life as true as being a truly worthy experience? Now, whether we accomplish all that we hope to in our revelations through our explorations, through our examinations is another thing, but that we are on that path. That I believe is the overarching purpose of 99% of the beings on this planet. Sometimes
Hmm.
I doubt that. And I wonder what the heck is going on. But generally speaking, I believe that the preponderance of the population is on that purpose. Yeah.
You know, we beat ourselves up worse than anybody could ever beat us up. That's what I've seen anyway. And so when you say that these things are not a flaw, like we're not flawed,
No.
and I believe that we came into this life guiding ourselves into the lessons that we're supposed to learn and the experiences that we're supposed to have in order to learn those. So I agree with you. It's not a flaw. It's not about emptiness. It's a signal from the soul, like you mentioned
Yes.
before. And so longing, like what do I really want? Like a lot of us don't even know what we want. We just
Yes.
know we don't want this, like whatever this
Yes.
is that's
Yes.
making us feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Absolutely. Yeah, I love the way you're describing that. And one of the sort of the adages that I have over the years sort of referred to when I have that perspective as you're describing it is that we are not a problem to fix. We are a mystery to be understood.
I love that. Yes.
Right? Yeah,
Yes.
and if we take that approach, then every splinter we experience, every ache, pain, disquiet, heartbreak, frustration, anger moments, what all those kind of things, all our redos we'd love to do, all those habitual patterns that we have, then become purposeful. As you're describing, it provides us wake up points. Now we can attend to those. They happen. And we say, well, we could rationalize it, and we all have our defenses, right? We put those up against those kind of things, and they may make us feel good for a while. Who knows how long a while might be, but they'll persist. And then eventually, with enough knocks, enough jolts, and sometimes sudden impact, we will humble ourselves to something that needs to be birthed. And the birth process itself is a painful one. I didn't go through it myself, but I witnessed it 3 times and firsthand in support and in a support role. It's not an easy process by any means. And that's our lives. It defines our lives, the continuation of our journeys here as human beings is really to take on that challenge and birth ourselves to the other side of our true potential. So how do we do that, right? That's the big question.
Right.
And I think, but fundamentally, we have to grasp that there's nothing wrong with us. The only thing that might be wrong with us is our resistance
Hmm.
and clinging and grasping. But even that's just a sign of how much we need and want to change truly. When I say we, I'm talking about the deeper aspect of ourselves, right? So that deeper aspect of ourselves. So it's all a matter of wake up. And in fact, a little background on my writing the book Longing. As I said, I entered into it with this curiosity. Why do we have this? This core toxic shame experience, for example, and these habitually learned and applied ways of being in the world that really don't serve our deeper being. They might serve our ego or keep us safe, but they're not
Right.
really there for much else than that. Why? Why all of that? And I really looked at the deeper quest of what it means to be human and how sacred it is. And part of my writing this led to, I didn't set out to do this, led to interviewing people, everyday people that we'd meet that I think were quite extraordinary in their response to adversity in their life. But they had, by what any means would be considered a crisis, a life crisis, entered
Hmm.
into dark, night of the soul, each of them in their own unique way, but characteristically decided that they would be impelled, they were compelled to move forward in life in a new way and take that pain and allow it to open them and soften them and move them into wider way of being, not only more sort of resourceful, but in a way that was loving, kind, compassionate, self-loving, and and um, and then learn from that and absorb the wisdom from their experience and from their learning. And
It's almost easier to give other people compassion and
yeah,
animals or whoever than it is for ourselves. And with pain comes vulnerability.
yes,
And that is so debilitating for those who you call it inherited lovelessness, feeling that you're not lovable. That made me so sad
mm,
to think of somebody that didn't feel like they could be loved or deserved love, that does harm our sense of self
absolutely. And that's the
and our
core.
perceived worth.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. As you're describing this, the term inherited lovelessness is one that I adopted from the writer and mystic Chandler Pamela Cribby. I love the way she described it. So there's other ways of describing that same phenomenon. In the Hoffman process, they referred to it as the negative love syndrome. It's been referred to as the mother wound. In Buddhism, they talk about that, the cycle of lovelessness. But it's all pointing to the same thing, and that core wound is shame. John Bradshaw's research was seminal in this area. There were other psychologists and researchers who were indicating this, but he was really pointing to we have this kind of toxic condition as human beings unless we change that. So there again, we go back to, well, what was the purpose of that? If it's universal, I submit that it is universal across culture, across time. And what's the point? If we're just here to come in and be tagged with suffering through separation and loneliness and apart and this debilitating kind of inferiority complex that we all initiate into, what's the point? That's not very evolutionary,
Right.
right? Where did we go with that? So if we turn that around and we say, hold on a second, maybe that did have an evolutionary purpose. Maybe there's something to the pain that I feel. And like you said, that feeling of resisting vulnerability or inferiority complex, it's really, and that is simply a playing out of what we're feeling which is unlovability. We enter into the world as separate,
Yes.
and I know you read this portion through the portion of my book around inherited lovelessness, and I was referring to that how this gets played out, that inherited lovelessness, that negative love, how it gets played out, and it's so universal as to strike one to say, hmm. what's behind this. So that anyway, I'm repeating myself, but that's what I'm referring to.
Well, you talk about our wounding by shame, and like even in astrology, there's the wounded healer,
Mm,
there's there are these concepts play out in a lot of Eastern traditions and a lot of tools that help us understand metaphysics as insight to the self. But you talk about it as a catalyst for change, and that's the same thing. Like you can't just be floating along and everything's fine and expect to change anything because you become complacent.
hmm.
There has to be something that shakes you up
Yes. Yeah.
and makes
Unfortunately, I know it, and the shakeup can become, I talk about the forms in which those shakeups happen. It could be precipitating event. You sort of get this like little, drop on the head. Oh, it's about to rain. And then you get that and you respond to it. You go, okay, yeah, I'll go take care of myself, get a raincoat jacket or go inside, whatever. And that happens in life every day with our disappointments, our repeated patterns that don't really get us what we're really wanting, or we get misguided. We have an attitude that that's what we should be doing, and that attitude's not serving us, and it keeps repeating into these behaviors and these attitudes that don't serve us. But then at some point, if we keep doing that, then it's going to be more like, a chunk of hail falls on our head until we keep up. And then the sleet comes and starts beating us down and we get
right.
nailed. Oh my gosh, what does it take,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Well, don't wait for the brick to fall on your head,
Yeah.
Like we can examine it way before that happens.
Hmm.
But, in your um examination of shame and pain, the destructive feelings that you say shape our lifelong beliefs around love, safety, worthlessness, and
Yes.
it does, but we don't have to let it linger for an entire
That's
lifetime.
yes. And that's agency, right? That's where we turn around and we say, look, excuse me, but what the hell is this? What is happening? I've been through a couple of marriages, or I keep losing my job. What, or, or I'm not, my kids are disconnected from me, whatever. And we finally wake up. It may not be in those kind of extremes, but there's a waking point. And then we can turn around and face it with honesty and say, what's going on? Let's assume there's nothing wrong with me. What is going on? What is this pain that keeps
Right.
manifesting? So what I say, what I articulate in my writing is that there's this root system. It's called shame that takes root, and then the rest of all these behaviors sort of offshoot, like through like a poison ivy plant, right? It's got that root down in, and then all these manifestations come out and they poison us and all these other things. Let's go to the root. What is that? What is that? And I submit that it funnels down to one main taproot, and that taproot is the condition of toxic shame. I
Mm.
know there's different levels of shame. There's a shame like, oops, I feel bad about myself because I did that. But I'm talking about the kind of shame that says, I'm bad, I'm unworthy, I'm dirty, I'm awful, I'm dangerous, I'm a mistake. Those kind of core beliefs, many of us have more than one statement, but there tends to be that one
Mm.
that we revolve around. And
That's
it's like,
self-loathing.
self-loathing. I'm not good enough. I'm bad. And so we keep twisting ourselves around that to defend against it, to to make it something else. Many of our most accomplished business titans, politicians, athletes operate, I submit, from a perspective of I'm not good enough. So they're proving that they're worth something. And look at me and look at these awards and these statuses. And we all
Mm.
do some version of that. But that's the way these things play out. If our core belief is I'm worthless, we're going to keep proving that we're worthy. If our core belief is I'm bad, we're going to fight against I'm a really good person. Look at me. I follow the rules. I do, and all of that. So we're looking for the external. But what's going on there is we're actually reacting to something that will never feed us. It will never get the result we want. So we have to go into the healing point of that. And the healing point is we were separated at birth from our divine source. As we came out into the world, we were born into a state of separation. And that separation led to all kinds of assumptions that were preconceptual. The baby could not conceive these things. They were all internally experienced. So they were at the visceral level. The baby, even at day one, was realizing something's wrong. I don't know a whole lot of babies come in the world giggling and smiling. Most of us are crying and screaming.
Yeah,
By all means, this sort of position of desperation. And we're hope what happened? What is going on? All these lights and sounds and temperatures and the sudden influx of hunger and pain, all of this at once hits us and it continues. Not at that level, of course, hopefully, with
right.
most people. Some people it does, but it goes on and on and on. So we keep having these traumatic experiences, I submit, around separation. Oh, I can't, now this is not a, conscious thought, but the baby viscerally is experiencing, I'm in trouble. I hurt.
Mm,
Don't know where this hurt's
okay.
coming from. The entity is experiencing pain. So again, all felt experience, all preconceptual. They have no way of interpreting any of this. But there's a memory being stored about the desperation of being born into this existence. And then what do? We scream and we cry, we flail. And we have others who solve that. Anyway, momentarily.
Mm. Well, and you bring up the idea in your book about trusting. We don't necessarily trust we're going to get fed or cared for. And so, we don't know how long this condition will last before
Yes.
someone comes.
All we know is we're in trouble, but we
Right.
can't articulate like you and I are sitting here as adults and articulating this. Uh,
Right.
but as children, we are having that felt experience, you know, and we are experiencing that desperation. So then that desperation and that knowledge of that knowing that we are dependent, we need others. What are we going to do?
Yes.
We're going to adapt to the others, right? We're not going to. I got it, folks. I'm going to go it alone. I'm 6 months old. I'm 12 months. I
Yeah.
got this. No, no. It's always I'll scream and cry. I'll plead with my smiles, and I will then get fed. I will get comfort. I will get protection. In the best of cases, right? And sometimes those are not met, and deeper kinds of traumas and neglect invest in that little being. But all of us had that common baseline experience of being separate and needing others to solve that for us. So then not only
Yes.
do we learn to communicate, but we learn to communicate in their language, be it English or Hungarian or the Italian, whatever language they might speak. But I'm talking about the relational knowledge. So we move from that into I will be avoidant of the scary one. I will be expressive or I will scream and cry and whatever. We learn to adapt. And then as we
Right.
emerge, the more that we grow, we all adapt according to our age, right? As a 5-year-old, we know what that's like to adopt parents' ways.
Yes.
As a 15-year-old,
Let,
right?
let's rewind a little bit and
Yeah.
go back to talking about pain.
Hmm.
So, our society tends to have pain and then we medicate it. And to me, the pain is an important signal so that we don't overdo physically. Let's just say if it's physical pain, if it's emotional pain, whether it's either one of those, mental pain, there's a drug for it. But I stipulate that as you're talking about separateness and separation, by medicating ourselves, we are moving farther away from source because now it's cut off. Because
Mm-hmm.
now our central nervous system can't communicate or connect with source energy,
Hmm.
and we aren't using the pain to our best advantage. Like, I don't want to be, I've had physical pain or whatever. I don't like painkillers because if I move wrong and I can't feel it, I could hurt myself more.
Hmm. Hmm.
So we need to have that pain
Hmm. Hmm.
and to not only deal with it, but sit with it and say, okay, where's it coming from? If it's physical, we usually know. Even emotional pain, it's important to sit with it and not just dismiss it or medicate it, dull it. Mental
Yes.
pain. a lot of times we're doing it to ourselves because we
Yes.
have these negative automatic thoughts that are flying around that are making us feel vulnerable and
Mm.
unlovable and self-loathing, and we're doing it to ourselves. And if we then cut ourselves off from source, it makes that exponentially worse.
I love the way you're describing that about the agency that we have, that we do at some level, whether it's conscious, intentional or not, we cut ourselves off. We experience that separation and we continue to cut ourselves off in favor of survival. Like we're gonna reach out, and you were talking about pain is numbing or deflecting or that I think is absolutely an imperative that we get at the root of what's hurting us. Now, if we break our leg, we a little morphine is actually a good thing, uh, but or whatever it might be. So it's not to diss the wise use of medications, but as a precursor for dealing with pain, as a constant, no. That I love what you're describing, and you being a Reiki master can point to the flow of energies, right, from divine source that we are not inviting into our being. And that's the trick, is what point can we be conscious enough to say, I've got this pain going on and it really hurts. And I don't know where this is coming from, but I'm going to turn inward and find and heal and not solve for, not in the equivalent of medicating the pain, making myself feel good for a while, but truly getting at the root and the purpose of it. And I think
Yeah.
that's the
Well,
enlightenment.
and pain makes us vulnerable. I mean,
Mm.
it does it's harder when we're in pain or when we're fatigued or whatever to have a filter to protect ourselves even energetically if we have pain. And I love how you believe that vulnerability is not a weakness, because I agree with that. It's not a weakness,
Mhm.
but you say that it's an essential doorway to transformation and spiritual
Yes.
clarity. Can you talk a little more about
Oh,
that?
I'd love to. Yeah. Most people, it's certainly a misnomer, but most people in our culture kind of adopt this heavy masculine perspective about emotions that you're sort of ignore them, deal with them, get away from them, whatever, dominate them, fix them, and all that sort of thing. When the real answer is in having the courage with intention to be vulnerable, to drop into the experience of that emotion, right? That is connecting to source. That I firmly believe, and I articulate this in longing as well, that emotions are the language of soul. They're beautiful wavelengths that come to us. And if we keep pushing them away or diverting them or whatever it might be, medicating for them, we're omitting these beautiful transmitters that are here for us to understand and decipher and grow from and be wise, purposeful, happy beings. Instead, we tend to think that stoicism is going to do it, or avoidance, or uh, whether it's prescribed medications or those that we sort of self-medicate, um, and and we avoid it. But when we turn into the language of those emotions with curiosity, openness, courage, and skill, we can learn. We can learn. And I emphasize skill because, this is sort of this messy way of moving into emotions, and that's in reaction to them. But if we respond, if we turn inward with thoughtfulness and purposefulness, sensitivity above all, self-compassion will emerge and we will find the purpose of that grief, of that happiness, whatever it might be. But there's always a message to it. And that's why I think most people deny that because they think that we're not supposed to feel. My
Right.
being a man
Well,
and
two, I think a lot of people rely on external indicators
mm,
of what's going on or what the meaning of it is. And it's really, like you were saying, it's our inner selves that have to examine these things,
yes.
because no matter how hard somebody might want to try to help you
Mm,
or understand you, the only person who could really do that is yourself. At the same time, objective self-observation is exceedingly difficult. So,
mhm.
you know, I mean, I talk about the four-part inner guidance system. You talk about the five layers of the self.
Hmm.
You add intuition to physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual.
Hmm.
I incorporate the intuitive with the spiritual, but it's the same thing. Like at every layer, how are those layers interacting? If we change something in one layer, it's going to affect the others. And
Yes.
so the only weakness, in my opinion, is when we decide I'm not going to deal with it. Um,
Hmm.
I'm I'm going to ignore it. I'm just going to, dull it. I'm going to
Avoid
whatever.
vulnerability, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
that's not a very
but it
courageous.
takes courage to
Yeah.
self-examine. It's
Yes.
scary.
Yes, I love that you put that in those terms, that it really is a matter of courage. It's an intentional act and it requires courage. And that's the hero. The hero where she turns
Yeah.
inward. And I talk about in this later portions of longing. And I refer to it in the feminine most of the time because I think that that feminine steps forward and says, I am here to open to. In the I Ching tradition, I am the field. I am the opening. I am the point of nurturance. Bring me your emotions. And we can most effectively do that through our feminine energy. Man or woman, trans, whatever it is, we are here to have all of us on board and experience that. Um, and so to deny ourselves that is really an act of cowardiceness. It's the avoidance of it. So stepping
Yeah.
into it is the broader act. And we don't have to do it. We have to do it, but we have to take agency and do this for ourselves, but we don't have to do it alone. And it cannot it does not have to be that complicated. And to that end, in longing, I do these sort of natural junctures, these natural flow points into creating moments of stillness where the reader can drop into a self-guided experience that isn't like
Mm.
so sort of a self-help book that says, okay, do this for 10 minutes and then write your answers here and whatever. It's semi-structured. It's in the flow of the writing to say, okay, now that we've explored the heroine, the hero, and she has had these experiences, you too take a moment, fi 3 minutes, 5 minutes, but step into stillness. And if it's noisy in there, pay attention to that. What's the nature of the noise? And let's understand that. Let's not run away from it. Let's not try to get to quell it, but let's
Distract from it.
distract from it. Right. And there's skill in that many of us really need to
Yes.
learn and be supported in our learning. And so you were
Yes.
talking about we have to do the work. You and I are both in this this domain of coaching people into this deeper experience of connecting to spirit. And in essence, that's
Well,
what
at the same time, but we're also doing it with ourselves,
oh
and we have to, like, we have to keep growing if we expect to help others and lift them. We can't stagnate.
oh my gosh.
So
Oh,
it's a lifetime of process, folks. It's not like I'm going to read this book or that book and then suddenly I'm going to have an epiphany and everything's going to be fine.
oh yeah.
It
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
work like that.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And that's okay,
I love that you're
you know.
articulating that too, and really putting that stake in. It's actually I don't know if you've had this experience, but the more that I open, the more I realize, oh my God, I have so much to learn. But it
Yes.
becomes rather than kind of this learning out of desperation and survival, it becomes a learning out of wisdom and infusion, and it feels really great. So
Yeah.
there's this point. I don't, my own recovery. I was a victim of childhood trauma, sexual abuse, and and lived with a lot of secrecy, meaning maintaining secrecy at an inappropriate age. Really trying to protect the adults living through all of that. Eventually, it wasn't easy, but eventually, climbing out, climbing out, climbing out, I could come to a place where I could say, this is great. I love this. This is so much better than that. And then, go back in for some more lessons and experience the pain and yet knowing more and more and more and more quickly reaching that place
Hmm.
of
Yes.
gratification, right? And seeing that in the people we serve. I I'll speak for myself. That's a question to you too, is what about the beauty of that? Do you experience that when you are really truly helping someone and you see them emerge and then emerge and emerge and emerge?
Yeah.
And
I call it unfoldment. So,
unfoldment, unfoldment.
yes.
Yes,
So they
yes,
open and
yes.
it's like a flower opening and then you can see deeper into that flower and then something else bubbles up and they deal with that. But when you were talking about personal trauma, whatever it is, whether it's, a childhood situation or a physical illness or whatever, I believe that those are put in our path so that we can better relate to the people that are struggling with that same thing so that we can help lift them. And to me that's the purpose. Like, yeah,
Mm,
okay, I'm going to overcome it for myself. But then once I do, I'm not going to be like, why did that happen to me? I'm going to be more like, okay, now I understand what they were
mm,
going through, and
mm.
now let me help you,
Yeah,
or
yes.
be available to you if you want to
And then
talk
you
about.
become part of the universal because you have empathy, and the higher order of that is compassion, where you can want to alleviate the suffering of the other. You
Yeah,
hope for that, but you're there to support, not do for, right? We don't cross those boundaries. It's for someone else.
correct.
And yeah, and that
But
to me
just
is
to
the
be
higher.
seen, like, how many times does somebody have an issue? Like, it's like drug counselors are normally people who have also suffered with addiction.
Mm,
Why? Because if you haven't, you really don't understand what that person's going through.
hmm.
I mean, I'm an empath and I can feel people's stuff, but with a specific issue like that, I think you really have to have experienced it for yourself
Yes.
in order to help at a deeper level.
Yes, yes, I couldn't agree more.
Right?
I couldn't agree more. Because if we don't have that point of reference, at least to what it is to have pain, we may not have to have the exact same experience as someone had. I know you're
Yeah.
not saying that, but just to make that abundantly clear. But to have had the sense of forlorn, of loss, of depression, whatever it might be, and elation and conquest and courage, to have those as well, that's what we can help lead others to or open their self to. And again,
Yes.
that was one of my chief aims of writing Longing was to share that this suffering is not only purposeful, it's universal. And you can
Right.
open to that. And here's some ideas. And so that's what I
It
do.
is. You're not alone.
Mhm,
Folks, you're not alone.
mhm.
So I'm gonna ask one more question
Okay.
because I'm curious about this. You talk about soul genius,
Mm,
and I love that.
mm.
And what do you mean by that? And how can someone begin to awaken and live from their own unique spiritual blueprint?
Beautiful. Yeah. The how-to part, right, is so important because it's one thing to know that we really have this aspect of ourself that most of us ignore or have ignored for long portions of our existence. And to open to that, as I refer to as soul, the unpierceable, uncuttable, enduring, eternal part of ourself that is searching for complete wholeness and unity with all that is, with source. That is within us. That is the genius that all of us possess. But out of fear and ignorance, we ignore it. How many
Mm,
times, and it's a sad notion. So I know numbers are waking up. We are opening and expanding. In the front end
mhm.
of writing Longing, I cover this territory from a statistical standpoint, not to get all boring into the stats, but to say there's a great trend happening into this direction of what's called SBNR, spiritual but not religious. And what is
Mm,
that about? People are opening to holding this soul genius within their self and are learning so many creative modalities for accessing that. So the world is
yes.
shifting. We are awakening. And I know some folks in our culture don't like that term, but that's exactly what is occurring is we are awakening. And we're going to reach a tipping point not too far from now where this will become more normative and there will be leadership into this. But that's that soul
Right.
genius. And when we every one of us ideally, every one of us is comfortable with possessing that, oh my God, how beautiful can the planet be? And just one other thing to underscore as I write, I refer to Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. He was a philosopher and a spiritualist in the 1920s who wrote about our soul, the genius of our soul. And that's happening at a planetary and interstellar universal level. And once we do, his optimism said that he articulated this thing called Omega Point. We will reach that point of absolute compassion for all, for ourselves and all. And of course, that might be some years off that you and I may not see, but we're on that trend. We're on it. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Where can, we talked about go to
Mhm.
livelifesoul.com
Yes.
for your website to find out what's going on with you and um, your book Longing is on Amazon. It's available June 2nd, but if you buy it now, it'll go to your Kindle or it'll be sent out
Yes.
automatically.
Yes, that's right. And thank you for mentioning that another route. If you like to support your local bookshop, you could, because it's distributed by Simon and Schuster, you just tell them you want a copy of Longing and they'll order it and you'll get it upon release.
Oh, great.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
easy to do.
Yeah,
And
we
if
have to
someone
support
wants to
them.
have a conversation with me, or I always offer a free session for connecting. They can just drop me an email at Chris at livelifesoul.com. And there's also a portal at my website, a contact page for doing so. And I'd love to hear from whoever
Awesome.
we have reached through this conversation. Yeah. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you so much for being here and telling us all about this marvelous process and hopefully it's going to make people feel better. Like it's all okay, guys. It's not, you
We're,
know, like it's okay.
Yes, yes, we're on it. We're on it. Yes, and Diane, you're welcome, and thank you very much. I appreciate your intellect and your involvement and your heart in this, and it's been a wonderful conversation for me. Thank you.
Thank you.